Do you sometimes wish you could forget some days? Skip them or just play rewind on the awful clips of your life? The pain and the stress sometimes make you unfocused. Your vision goes blurred and mind all hazy. Well, it was exactly one of those days. But first, I'll give you a little background about me. I'm Natalie. I am 14 years old. I have recently started going out with a boy from my school, Harry. He's a dream come true. He has asked me to be his girlfriend a few weeks ago. My mom passed away when I was 6, and I was brought up by my dad, who is extremely hardworking. My dad is a mechanic and leaves home at the crack of dawn. It was a Thursday morning. My dad had already left for work. I was in deep slumber when a shooting pain in my stomach jolted through my entire body. It was hard for me to breathe. It took everything in my body to get up from my bed. My dog was watching me with the bleary eyes, and I wondered, why can't he do something? Can he see my agony? After the struggle, I finally grabbed hold of my phone and called 911. The dispatcher was kind and understanding. She was quick to send me help. Finally, they arrived. The sound of the ambulance alerted my dog. My dog bolted towards the door and started barking continuously. As a result, they broke the main door and took me to the hospital. I opened my eyes to a scrupulously spotless hospital room. Beams of sunlight filtered through the window. "Relax, honey," I heard a soft voice whisper. It was a nurse. I sighed and tried to relax. Within the fraction of a few seconds, I glanced at my stomach, which made me panic. It was swollen to the size of a hot air balloon. I started questioning myself. "What is this?" I asked myself repeatedly. It took me a fine moment before it dawned upon me. I let out a huge gasp. Am I a 14-year-old growing a real-life baby in my tummy? Am I going to become a mother? I cringed at the thought, but the sight of my growing stomach only confirmed my realization. "But I've only had my first kiss with Harry a few days ago," I said as I tried to gather my thoughts. "This can't be true." I started crying relentlessly. My shrieks and cries grasped the attention of the nurses. They looked at me and started laughing. Their laughter overshadowed my agony. Their shrill laugh made my head spin, which came to a halt when I heard a sudden knock at the door. A feeling of relief washed over me as the person behind the door was my affectionate father. "Dad, I've missed you," I breathed. My dad had a shabby appearance. His eyes were sunken in with huge eye bags underneath. I was slightly confused. He rushed towards me and engulfed me in a hug. He ignored my growing belly, but when he saw, he gave me a smile. "I can't believe I'm going to be a grandfather." I was taken back. Why is he behaving like that? I pondered. That was certainly not the reaction I was expecting. "We have to get you out of this hell," said my dad. "Why?" I questioned. "They are not good for you." It would be an understatement if I say I was bewildered at how my dad was behaving. The nurses started laughing out of the blue. Laughter echoed through the white walls of the hospital room. It made my dad lose his temper. He started yelling at them. Suddenly, made his way towards me and picked me. He detached the tube of the drip out of my arm. I gasped due to the sudden discomfort. His actions alerted the hospital staff. The nurses called the security and they took my dad away. They prevented him from seeing me afterward. In the next few minutes, the same intensity of pain ran through my frail body. The nurses injected medicine into my body and asked me to relax. "You'll be all right, darling," comforted a nurse. I threw up multiple times that night, which consequently made me feel better. They gave me a few pills to make me fall asleep. Later that night, I woke up due to a disturbance in my room. I was shocked to see my dad in my room. He had his hand over my attendant's mouth. I was petrified. I had never seen that mysterious terror in my dad's eyes. He was unrecognizable in nurse scrubs. Anyone could be easily fooled by his new persona. I didn't know what to do. But I knew one thing. My life was in danger. He hurriedly put me in the wheelchair, ripping away the drips. "Dad, stop! Dad, you are hurting me!" I let out a faint, incoherent cry. "Shut up!" Dad yelled. His eyes were bloodshot red, skin pale and lips trembling. I closed my eyes momentarily and a whimper escaped my mouth. What has come over my dad? I wished my mom was still alive. Is it too much to ask for? I thought medicine and illness made me emotional. I hated that feeling. My dad took a hold of my wheelchair and rushed through the bleak hospital hallway. He greeted the doctors and hospital staff in a sing-song female voice. I never knew my dad had astounding acting skills, but similarly, I didn't know anything about him, did I? I questioned myself. I never knew I had to see the day I'd have to see his facade slipping away. But here I was, being escorted by my dad dressed in nurse clothes. Life is so strange. It was too much to process for my 14-year-old brain. A doctor stopped us at one point and requested my dad to join him for his daily round at the children's ward. My dad pushed my wheelchair in a vacant hospital room and left me to help the doctors. I was surprised. He left me there for some time and came back with a devilish grin plastered on his face. They are such fools, the doctors. I can outsmart them every single day. I couldn't believe my dad would say such things for people highly regarded in our society. He was being outrageously awful. He told me that he has checked the patient's body temperature, measured blood pressure, and blood glucose concentrations. That easy, you see. They think they're gods. I had been horrified for my life as well as the ones my dad treated a while ago. Few seconds passed, and I heard some voices. "Catch them! Catch them! They are running! Phone the security now!" The entire hospital was in mayhem. People were running. Nurses, visitors, doctors, and admin staff, all of them were in a state of chaos. But nothing could stop my dad. He was still going peacefully at his own pace, oblivious to the chaos caused by his antics. A yell stopped him for a moment, but he grabbed the wheelchair and started sprinting through the hospital towards the elevator, colliding with the medical equipment and food trolleys in our way. At one point, he toppled cleaning trolley. There was alcohol and disinfectant all over the floor. God help me! Save me from the monster my dad has become! Nurses were calling the security, and I wondered why it took them so long. "Please don't harm me," I cried. My mind was spinning and my vision was becoming hazy, but I tried my best to keep myself conscious. I took small breaths as instructed by my father once. I wanted my father back. "Where did you go, Dad? Please, what has happened to you?" He blatantly ignored my cries. Finally, we reached the elevator. My heart was pounding hard against my chest. I had streams of tears running down my cheeks. My life was at risk because of my father. Is there anyone more unlucky than me? I questioned myself. I hope not. My dad pushed the buttons to the highest floor. "We'll put you to sleep forever. These doctors are no good for your deteriorating health," he whispered in my ear. For the first time in my life, hearing my dad's voice caused shivers to run through my body. I always found his voice soothing and comforting. I was certain he was possessed or something. He was behaving like a hysterical madman. Not only that, but he also didn't care about his blood, me. We reached the 40th floor. I was frightened. The doors of the elevator opened. Luckily, the security guards reached before us. His face lost its color, his eyes were wide and his body shaking. He was panic-stricken. In a matter of seconds, he pushed me towards the security guys. I was grateful they arrived on time. I didn't even want to think about what could have happened if they didn't come to rescue me. My dad went hysterical. He was mocking them. He was making animal-like noises. "Catch me if you can." He looked like a kid has taken away his favorite stuffed toy or candy. "Let's have kids." Kids? I questioned. He sure had some mental issues. What could have happened in a span of night? I didn't know. He ran towards the stairs with guards following behind him. I was left all alone on God knows what floor. I screamed and cried for help. I tried to gather strength to get up on my legs. My legs were shaking. I was having hot flashes and I was sweating profusely. I said my prayers repeatedly. God, give me the strength to stand up. Put me to my feet. It took everything in me to get up. I gripped the sides of the wheelchair tightly, trying to stand up. Finally, I got up. I couldn't believe myself. I let out a scream. I yelled, "Hurrah! I can walk!" With that, I went inside the elevator. Despite Dad's questionable antics, I still loved him. Why wouldn't I? He had brought me up with all the love and affection in this world. I was the luckiest kid with the most affectionate and caring father and an adorable little pup. Oh, my pup! You must be hungry. The thought of my puppy all alone in my house saddened me. I stopped at each floor to help my dad, but couldn't see him anywhere. I screamed his name each time, but my efforts proved to be useless. At the 7th floor, I finally saw him. But what I saw made my head spin. I couldn't believe I saw that with my own eyes. My jaw went slack. I thought I was daydreaming, so I pinched myself again and again. It was my dad getting into a fight with someone who was also my dad. I was shocked. My dad was wearing his work clothes. They were greasy. Couldn't contain my emotions and thoughts. It was the moment I passed out. When I woke up and saw my loving dad next to me, feeling of relief washed over me. My dad gave me a warm embrace. I couldn't stop crying. I was so scared. Do you know what has happened? Please, Dad, I need to know. He told me to relax. He told me that guy was a criminal who had run away from jail. He was taking revenge on the hospital. The hospital had sent him to jail because he took part in criminal activities taken place at the hospital a few years ago. He resembled my dad, which is why I mistook him as my dad. In addition to this, I ate too much Chipotle, which caused food poisoning. I needed emergency treatment, which I received promptly. My dad brought me my favorite tomato cream soup and kissed my forehead. You're safe, my kid.
My first kiss was underwater. I was 15 years old. The school year came to an end, and the class had a semester party to celebrate. I don't normally go to parties during high school, being the awkward kid that I am, but what the hell? Another school year ended, and the venue for the party was near my village, so I came and went. It was a pool party, and while I was hanging out with my circle, one of my classmates went up to me asking if she could borrow my shirt because her two-piece bathing suit was too revealing. This girl is one of the prettiest and smartest students in the school campus, and I kept wondering, if she really were that smart, she would have thought of bringing an extra shirt, lol. But that's where it all started. I gave her my favorite orange shirt that I'm wearing at the moment, because I'm a dweeb and she's a school princess. She gets everything she wants. As I was about to leave, because I really don't have a thing for parties back then, she wouldn't give the shirt back and insisted that I go back to the pool and drink a little bit more. I declined. So she used the old trick of getting help out of the pool, and when I took her hand, she forced me back into the pool like a mother F. She laughed, and I did too. We knew each other for 3 years, but we were never really close friends. As we made small talk, we were getting farther from the ledge of the pool and into the deeper part of it. I was taller, so when she couldn't reach the floor, she climbed on my back. When the topic swayed to her giving my t-shirt back again, she refused, again. I told her I was going to drop her off so she would drown and die a horrible death if she wouldn't give me my shirt. She refused again. And I did drop her for a brief moment and picked her up again, this time in a way that she's hugging me now. I laugh, and she did too, saying I was a jerk while her hand was at my neck and her head was laying on my shoulders. She then very much insisted on me staying for a little while so she could still wear a shirt to the pool party. At this point, I was so confused, and for a wimpy kid like me to even be hanging out with a girl like her is something I cannot comprehend, and she's clearly not that drunk. So, in the spur of the moment, as we were having a good time with the back and forth discussion about the shirt thingy, I just man up for whatever reason and proposed her a deal. I shakingly said, I'll stay so she could keep wearing my shirt. Only and only if she would kiss me right there and then. She let out an absurdly cute giggle and just nodded at me while smiling. And she returned her face to my shoulder. Man, I was so head over heels for her at that time, and I was really struggling to act cool despite being surprised by her gesture. We were both whispering at this point, and after a brief moment of awkward silence, we both agreed that we can't do it right there and then, seeing as some of our classmates were already staring at us. I jokingly suggest we went to the bathroom, but that would be way, way obvious. She, on the other hand, recommended that we simply went for a dip and did it underwater. And so we did. She slipped from our hug and dipped first. I exhaled before shortly following her deep into the pool. I saw her blurry face slowly going for the kiss. As our lips touched, her body fell into mine. We were floating sideways underwater while making out. My first kiss was one for the books. The girlfriend experience. Times were tough. It was no secret I was miserable. A cloud of gloom followed me everywhere, including my job. A relationship breakup like mine would put anyone to the test, and frankly, I was failing it. Still, I had bills to pay, and it wasn't going to help if I gave up and stopped getting out of bed. Each day I dragged myself to the office and go through the motions like a zombie. I know my performance and attitude suffered, but I didn't care at the time. Much of the occupational grief and aggravation of the 9-to-5 grind involved being employed so a person could afford nice things and have a fulfilling relationship with a significant other. Once the relative rewards of that dynamic went out the window, so did my motivation to work. I guess it's a testament to my ability to do my job well that I wasn't fired outright after I went off on a difficult client. Behavior like that was a threat to the corporate bottom line. Obviously, they didn't want that. Apparently, they didn't want to let me go either. Instead, management tried a very unorthodox tactic, which I only found out about much later. They actually hired a temp to romance me and boost my ego. It's called the girlfriend experience because it is supposed to feel real. It's far more than paying a person to be intimate with me. That stipulation wasn't even in the contract. Legally, it couldn't be. They just paid her to pretend to be infatuated and smitten. How she managed to achieve that artificial flattery was her business. I must say, it totally caught me off guard. In all fairness, I might have recognized the snow job a mile away if I wasn't deeply sad and emotionally vulnerable. Instead, I ate up the attention with a spoon. They were smart enough to not hire a supermodel. They found a lady that was probably in the top register of who I might have had a chance with in real life, if I tried really hard to woo her. Not that I had to, mind you. She was the definition of a ringer. I gotta say, it takes a certain skill set to seduce a person with that level of believable sincerity. I totally fell for it. They brought her into the office and assigned her to assist me on a big account. At first, it pissed me off. I didn't care that she was attractive and working extremely closely with me. I resented the idea of having to hold anyone's proverbial hand and training her to be actually helpful. To my relief, she was a quick study and eager to learn. Knowing what I know now, I still marvel at the theatrics and lengths the company went through to insert this woman into my life. It is kind of flattering to know they orchestrated the whole thing. I know it was only about the money I normally brought in, but it makes me feel damn important. Missy was coy at first, respectful and aloof even. She maintains a polite distance while giving off a slight smitten vibe or schoolgirl crush. Like a big knucklehead, I swallowed the performance hook, line, and sinker. The truth is, I wanted to believe. Honestly, who in their right mind would have suspected such an elaborate hoax from my behalf? It wasn't long before we were sneaking off after hours to see each other socially. The whole time, I was scared to death they would send her back to the temp agency. Inter-office romance is strictly forbidden by HR, so we kept the relationship a secret as long as we could. Once we had moved past a certain point, I didn't care if anyone found out. I was finally happy again. By all appearances, she was too. I eventually asked her to marry me, and she accepted. Of course, I didn't know it was originally an arranged fling, so I definitely wouldn't have guessed it was about to lead to an arranged marriage. The thing is, at what point does the facade cease to be worth playing along with for the corporate payout? Even for a person pretending to be interested in me, at some point, you'd think she would call the whole thing off, right? Either that, or invent an excuse to break things off and still maintain the original deception. Here was an actress who entered into a contract to perform as, quote, my girlfriend, and then, for whatever reason, kept up the pretense long enough to marry me. At that point, I still didn't know the truth. I would have expected my employers to come clean, but it had went too far. It's one thing to pay for a brief little office flirtation. It's quite another to keep silent while their gullible employee committed to a legally binding contract. I was blissfully happy and absolutely ignorant to the disturbing truth. She was everything I thought I ever wanted. Believe it or not, she confessed the whole organized charade on our 25th wedding anniversary. I was gobsmacked. I thought it was part of some prank or practical joke, but she was dead serious. My whole world crumbled. Our 3 children were grown up and already out of the house. I'd made partner with the firm, and yet I found out the last 25 years of my life were based on some bizarre farcical performance script. Missy explained that while she had entered into the contract just trying to be a professional actress, she soon developed sincere feelings for me. On one hand, after admitting it started as an elaborate seduction hoax, it was hard to believe anything she said. On the other hand, however, I'd had a quarter-century of marital happiness and fantastic kids. Was she finally telling the truth? Or was she still acting as a consummate professional actress dedicated to the role? I thought long and hard about it as she slept peacefully beside me. I loved her, and I honestly believe she loves me. Much of life is pretending until it becomes true. In the end, does the duration of the facade matter as long as both parties are committed to it? I shut down a 14-year-old's attempt. Okay, so first, let me describe what I look like. Trust me, it's relevant. I'm a 20-year-old male, 5'11", 280 pounds, sport a full beard, wear flannel jeans and work boots all year round, an avid martial artist, never go anywhere without my fixed-blade buck knife. I kind of look like I should be in a motorcycle gang. Really, just the whole 9 yards of intimidating young man. So basically, even though I'm really a big softy at heart, you probably wouldn't want to see me coming down a dark alley at night. So I just spent the last few weeks helping this lady I've known for like half my life with the task of running a building at the fair. Well, along with myself and her are her kids, who are my somewhat distant cousins. But by random chance, I've grown up with them in 4-H for like the last decade. Anyway, it's her 15-year-old daughter and her 10-year-old son and her 2-year-old daughter. There is also this other lady helping out who has 2 kids of her own and is a good friend of the lady I'm helping. One of her kids is a 14-year-old boy who has a really obvious and unrequited crush on my cousin. Now, this crush thing doesn't bother me at all or anything. I honestly just cringed at how obvious it was when he first showed up. Later on, my cousin tells me about how this kid has already tried to ask her out, but she's basically just not interested and turned him down. The part that becomes an oof is that their moms are close friends, so they keep having to hang out together, and they're actually pretty okay friends. Cool, so now for the actual story. The 3 of us were sitting together running the front table of the building at the fair. The seating is important. It's me behind the table, my cousin sitting next to me, then this kid sitting next to her in kind of kitty corner so he can face more towards her. Well, at some point while we were sitting there, passing around memes and listening to music, she did something. I'm not sure what it was. I think she jokingly took his phone or something. Well, this started a little wrestling contest with her trying to keep his phone away from him and him trying to get it back. After he got his phone back, his revenge was to reach out and start tickling her around the waist. Still fine, but it got my attention because he put his hand under her shirt to do it. That was sort of a yellow flag for me, and I decided to keep an eye on where this was going. He pulled back from the tickling. I could see the wheels turning in his horny little brain. Let me be clear that I recognize this because I was once a horny little shit of a teenager too. So I was watching him to go through the same thought process I would have gone through at his age as I realized I could get away with putting my hands all over a pretty girl with a good excuse. In eye-rolling predictability, he went back in for round 2. This time, doubling down on the personal space invasion. I've had enough of this to turn my head away from Reddit on my phone and dramatically raise my gaze to look him straight in the eyes from underneath the edge of my westernish-style hat. He catches my eye. She is laughing and bent over and fending off the tickle attack that I don't think she understood the significance of. So she couldn't see either of our faces. At that moment, while he's looking my way, I narrow my eyes ever so slightly with a slight frown. The message is sent and received loud and clear in the ancient language of manliness. Son, you might be getting away with this by her standards, but I understand what you are doing and I don't appreciate you trying to feel up my little cousin right in front of me. If you know what's good for you, you'll get off this train at the next station. The look on his face was priceless. A half an ounce each of shame and embarrassment from realizing that he wasn't as smooth as he thought, mixed with just a quarter ounce of terror at realizing he was on the wrong side of someone who looks like me, and just a pinch of fear that I might say something that would put all of this out in the open. Well, it was a delicious drink. He pulled his hands away from her so fast that I wouldn't have been surprised to hear the sound barrier crack. We then had a silent moment where his expression said clearly in that same old language, "Oh, S. My apologies, mister. I won't let it happen again, and certainly not in your presence. Could I beg you the kindness of not destroying me physically or emotionally? Please have mercy." I allowed him to quietly get out of this one, but not before sending the message back that he would be allowed this mistake, but would not be given another chance to get off so easy. Overall, I'm actually way more proud of this than I have any right to be. The girl has been something of a surrogate sister to me, so I definitely felt like a big brother looking out for his little sis. And if you are thinking I might have been overreacting and making something out of nothing, I made a comment about this to her later, and her response confirmed that my read of the situation was right on the money. Too long, didn't read. Little perv tried to feel up my little sister right in front of me because he thought a tickle fight was good enough cover to get away with it. I silently intimidated him into stopping with nothing more than a glance in his direction, and I'm proud of myself for it. My sad story about losing my virginity. It was 2008, and I'm in the 9th grade. The last bell rang the sound of freedom to start the weekend. I walk out into the hallway, and my girlfriend's best friend hands me a note and swears she didn't read it. I get seated on the bus, and I open the folded note that I still today have next to me. Quote, "I want you to come see me at my house tonight. I will text you when my parents are asleep. My brother is staying the night at his friend's house, so we can have some alone time. Love, Grace. XOXOXO." We were going to be together forever because we had fallen in deep love through our 2-month relationship. We got detention for kissing in the hallway. Our MySpace pic was us kissing. We called each other every night and had phone sex the night before, so I'm hoping in my mind that tonight she wants the real deal. As soon as I get home, I get into my dad's truck and steal all the change out of the cup holder and the half-pack of Marlboros from the passenger seat. I Google how to have sex, how to turn a girl on, how to please a girl in sex, how you know if a girl is horny. I was 15, of course. I'd watched plenty of porn and wasn't completely dumb to the idea of sex, but wanted to have knowledge because I was a virgin as Grace was too. At 7:30, I put my earphones in and play My Chemical Romance on my iPod Nano, light up a cigarette, and start riding my skateboard into town. Flipping my long hair so I could see, I head into a gas station and grab a box of condoms and lay them on the counter and start counting out $3.85 or something like that with my quarters, dimes, and pennies. Yes, I was broke. A voice behind me said, "At least you're buying those and not diapers." I turned around, and it's Grace's dad's police officer friend that came over to drink beer with him. I panic and come up with, "Yeah, I heard you can fill him with enough water to fill an entire bathtub." He laughs and says, "Yeah, and they would keep me from arresting Grace's dad when he knocks you out for getting her pregnant, too." I begin to really panic and leave the gas station thinking about what would happen if he told Grace's dad. We would have to break up, and I wouldn't lose my V-card to my hot girlfriend I masturbated thinking about every night for the past 2 goddamn months. Enough meeting at the skate park, French kissing for 2 hours a night, leaving with a boner hard enough for a blacksmith to use as an anvil. I was ready to pound it into this chick and be with her forever. She was all I thought about. I had her name carved into the grip tape of my skateboard, and her notes that smelled like her perfume in my Vans shoebox under my bed. She borrowed my hoodie and wore it during school, and it smelled like her when I got back. Holding her hand everywhere we went, we always had fun times that I still smile about to this day. Quote, "They are asleep. Let me know when you get here." I sneak to her window and she opens it. I climb through the bush and hop there. Grace's bedroom smelled like perfume and burnt hair. Deftones playing on the radio just loud enough where her mom wouldn't walk down the hall to ask her to turn it down. She's wearing a tank top and short shorts, done her makeup and straightened her hair for me. Looked so beautiful, her eyes were looking into mine, her hands shaking as were mine. We lay on her bed and start making out, leading to the first time we had sex. I may sound like a pervert for saying it now, but F me, it was amazing. She looked incredible, and we enjoyed each other. When we are done, I shove the used condom in my pocket, and we kiss for an hour, and we sneak out to smoke. I kiss her and tell her I will call her when I get home. I get home and try calling her and get voicemail every time. I texted her saying, "I love you. I left the condom wrapper in your floor somewhere. Get rid of it." And don't get a response until 2 hours later saying, "Come back over." I try calling again and get voicemail and get a text saying, "Phone keeps hanging up. Just come over, baby." So I say, "Okay, wait by your window." When I get there, I sneak up to the window and can hear Grace screaming at her mom. I get ready to hide on the side of the house when I'm slammed into the ground and held down. Boy, if I ever see you around my daughter again, I will beat the S out of you. Get the F out of my yard. He picks me up and pulls me by the arm until we are in the road and shoves me and makes me fall. I look back and see him pick up my skateboard and sling it way above me, and it hits the road far away from me. I grab it and I skate like I had an effing tiger chasing me. The next morning, my mom and dad banged on the bedroom door and told me they got a call from Grace's parents and told me they found a condom wrapper and that I had been making her smoke cigarettes with me. An embarrassing argument ended up being no laptop and no phone for an effing month. Grace's parents pulled her out of public school, and her best friend passed notes for me and Grace, telling how much we love each other and we will figure out a way to see each other. But we didn't. She switched to a private school, and her parents watched her like a hawk. Grace's friends stopped giving me notes for a week, and one day she tells me Grace wants to break up. As soon as I get home, I grabbed the house phone and called her crying, convinced her mom to hand Grace the phone. She is crying too, explaining that her mom found the notes and wanted us to end it until her dad grabbed the phone and said goodbye and hung up. When I finally get my laptop and phone back, I cry listening to the voicemails she sneaked, crying in all of them, telling me she loves me and she never wants to lose me. I was heartbroken through all this, and to this day believe her parents effing overreacted. I discovered she ended up with a preppy boy a year later when I added her when Facebook became a thing. Had a few photos of her sitting on the couch with him and was dressed completely different. Her music interests were effing pop music. Her parents approved of this Sorry, it's what we refer to them as, and I had to move on. Grace's parents molded her into the perfect girl they wanted, and I stayed the same. Our paths just split. All because the cop asshole called her dad and told him about seeing me buy the condoms and didn't like me because I was busted ding-dong ditching with friends last year. My wife made me get rid of all the notes, but I kept a few. So that is my virginity/lost love story. I hope it occupied your time, and if it didn't, back out and don't be a downvote douche. Writing this gave me nostalgia. Please respect that. I pooped myself on a camping trip with my girlfriend. Back in 2017, my friend Dylan and his girlfriend Leah invited me to go on a camping trip with them, and I invited my girlfriend Tori to come along, and she said yes. We'd only been dating for a little over 2 months, but I didn't think it would be too awkward since we recently started sleeping together, and she had hung out with Dylan and Leah a few times. We all wanted a real camping trip and chose Red River Gorge in eastern Kentucky. We hiked up a hill way out in the woods and found a good spot where people had set up camp before. I brought a 2-person tent and blankets to make a sleeping pallet, and Dylan brought his 4-person tent along with an inflatable mattress for them and their German Shepherd Teddy. I felt like a cheap bastard watching them inflate it while I explained to Tori that I spent $140 on all the stuff I bought and I was broke. She told me she didn't care, as long as she was with me. We got everything set up, started a campfire, and started drinking Jim Beam and Coke while the girls made bullfrogs with their Kool-Aid and vodka. We roasted hot dogs and s'mores and talked about family camping trips, party stories, and whatnot. I was glad to see Tori laughing and having a really great time. I held her and glanced up at the stars through the trees a few times, thanking God I had her. Everyone got pretty drunk, and Dylan had finished a 5th of the whiskey, and I was sweating like a whore in church because it was so humid. Around 1 a.m., we were in our tents, and me and Tori had a wild, sweat-drenched sex session and slept in our underwear because it was so muggy inside the tent. I woke up around 5 a.m. with my stomach cramping like hell. I clenched my eyes and bit my tongue, trying not to moan out in pain and wake up Tori. I put my clothes on, crawled out of the tent, stood up, and dug out a roll of toilet paper from the bags between the tents and ran into the deep brush. I tripped on a tree root and dropped the effing toilet paper and it rolled down the hill. I started running back to get another roll and couldn't handle the pain anymore. I tried to let out a little fart and felt warm juice squirt out. F me, F, please, no, I said as I pulled my shorts and boxers down to examine them with the light from my phone. There was brown chili-looking S all in my boxers, like pulling over and opening your smoking car hood and you know your engine is effed. I quickly pulled my boxers off, squatted down to finish my intensely messy S that sounded like pouring a bucket of wet sand on the leaves and felt so much better. I tossed my boxers away from the trail and heard someone walking down from the campsite. I freaked out because I had S all over my legs, and on one of my hands, it smelled like an effing porta potty in the middle of summer. It ended up being the dog, Teddy. I shooed him away and used the bandana wrapped around my forehead to wipe my butt and tossed it. I sneaked back to the campsite and cleaned up with a bar of soap and a bottle of water with the dog awkwardly watching me the entire time, and decided to sacrifice my deodorant stick and rub it all over my skin and down my butt crack to mask the horrid smell. I went back to the tent, cuddled up to Tori, and went back to sleep. We woke up to Leah screaming. We got out of the tent and saw Teddy running out of their tent with her screaming, "What the F, you nasty GD dog?" We walked over and asked what was wrong, and Leah told us Dylan's stupid dog dragged her underwear into the tent full of S, and she had it on the back of her shirt and all over the mattress. Tori was disgusted and looked away while Dylan got out and went to find a stick. I was panicking, hoping Tori wouldn't see my American Eagle boxers, and told her, "That's so sick, I don't want to see them," and hoped she would follow me back to the tent. But she didn't. She ignored me and stood there while Dylan held the baby blue boxers on the end of the stick, dripping drops of poop on the ground, holding his nose as he put them in a Walmart bag. I stood there and saw Tori looking at my waist out of the corner of my eye with a fake disgusted shocked look on my face and not one on hers. "Whose effing underwear is it?" Leah asked, looking at me and Dylan. We both denied it was ours, and I suggested it was someone who previously camped here. "Yeah, well, it seemed pretty effing fresh to me. I'm a CNA, trust me, I know." Tori was completely quiet while the two fought about the dog always being into something, and Leah threatening to leave Dylan if he didn't get rid of Teddy. I tried to keep my poker face on while Dylan poured water on Teddy and scrubbed with his toothbrush to get the S out of the fur because, of course, the dog rolled in the S. There was no way in heck I was going to admit that I S'd myself. I had a feeling Tori knew it was mine because even though it was dark, I'm sure she saw my boxers when my shorts sagged. Leah would effing kill me if I said it was mine after having to throw away her shirt and go through all of that. We ate breakfast, packed up, stopped to fill up on gas, and started driving back home. Tori was very quiet and funny acting towards me. She randomly says, "I would be pretty mad if I woke up to the smell of those underwear. But I would understand that someone got sick," and stared at me. I took a deep breath and admitted I got sick, and did not ever think of the dog getting to them when I threw them in the woods. She asked me why I didn't own up to it, and I told her I was too embarrassed to. We didn't have sex for 2 weeks, and she acted funny around me. A month later, she got really drunk from mixing brandy and gin, S'd all over herself, and puked her guts up in my bathroom and was too drunk to clean herself up. She was laying on the floor crying, so I picked her up, put her in the bathtub, and cleaned the S and puke from the toilet and floor, then bathed her like a real boyfriend would do. She told me she understood why I was too embarrassed to own up to my SE boxers. Night to school, daily fistfights, barely punished. So since kindergarten, me and this kid I'll call Andrew have been in the same class together. He's always been kind of a smartass, but we were friends. But this all started to go downhill in first grade. One day, we had a sub. At the end of the day, Andrew got mad for whatever reason. Andrew started to get mad, and this is the first blow-up I've seen him have. He started throwing his desk in the air, really kind of just tipping it, and knocking some of the things out of it. The sub didn't really do anything from what I can remember. I thought this was a one-time thing, but 8-year-old me was wrong. On several occasions that weren't serious enough to remember, Andrew lost his S. In first grade, our class had to take a test to see if we were gifted or not. Of course, Andrew was gifted, and so was I. In second grade, there was this other gifted kid in our class. It was a gifted cluster class, so a pretty large chunk of our class was probably gifted, that both me and Andrew were now friends with, who we'll call Dylan. Dylan stayed in our class from then on, now 5th grade. He's also had to deal with Andrew's S. Let's skip to 4th grade. This was a pretty uneventful year. Now, there's this kid who lives on Andrew's street. Let's call him Brad because he was kind of a D. Every morning, and I mean every morning, Brad and Andrew would get into what were practically fistfights on the bus. Our bus driver was a pretty chill dude, so I don't know that he knew what was going on, but he wasn't a bad bus driver. But later, he brings some justice. So Andrew doesn't like some things. He doesn't like being called nicknames, and sometimes he can't take a joke. When he gets mad, he gets all pink and usually cries and plays the victim card. One day, when me, Dylan, and Andrew were getting off the bus, last ones to get off, Andrew very casually said, "A lot of people don't know that I physically harm myself. I don't know what to do." So I did the most logical thing I could think of and told our teacher, a very nice woman. Kinda crazy, but she thanked me for telling her. Later, Brad ended up getting suspended or something and banned from the bus for kicking a kindergartner or something. I don't know the details. Later in the year, Andrew brought a knife to school. He was showing everyone. This didn't raise any red flags until he states it was for self-defense. That's a big no-no. Luckily, our mutual 5th grade friend told the bus driver, and Andrew was escorted off the bus by the vice principal. He was suspended for 3 days, and Dylan told the whole class what had happened. I didn't want to say anything, as I thought it would be kind of disrespectful. Another time, afternoon, he sat on a kid, fellow fourth grader. Let's call this kid Diego. Diego usually sat in the seat in the back, the three-seater, not the half seat. Diego raced back there, and Andrew climbed over the seat on purpose. Me and Dylan watched in horror as Andrew sat on Diego, our fellow classmate. Diego was trapped under the seat. Andrew was yelling against our reasoning that he should get up as everyone in the last few seats, mainly me, Dylan, and Diego, were basically pleading with him to get up. That's when the bus driver comes back and gets Andrew to get up and the vice principal comes on. I don't know what Andrew said, but he started doing that angry cry I mentioned earlier and was escorted off the bus along with his pre-K sister who was not involved. Andrew wasn't suspended, but he wasn't allowed to sit next to Diego after that. Thankfully, Diego was unharmed. Diego wasn't in our class this year, luckily. Even later in the school year, I saw Andrew on a Google slide. This was the year our city put Chromebooks out in schools. That was basically about how much he hated himself and what he thought was wrong with himself. I didn't end up telling a teacher as I didn't know how to do it. I tried to, but it just never was the right time. Eventually, Andrew was put into weekly therapy. He told me and Dylan first, which we were happy about because he clearly needed the help. I also decided not to share this with anyone, as I thought it was a pretty personal thing and not my business to be sharing. Andrew told everyone in the grade, but I didn't really care, as it's his business to do what he pleases with. But that was last year. There was still another year's worth of BS to write. So there was an opening for safety patrol. Only 4th and 5th graders could apply. Me and Andrew both got in. We were in the first rotation. There were too many applications, so it was split between 3 sets of us throughout this year. In our second or third week in, background, we came to class 5 minutes late because that's when the bell rang for us to get to class. He stomps into the classroom, throws his badge and sash onto the floor, and is crying/yelling about how he's done and wants to quit. Our teachers took him outside, cooled him off, and a few days later, another 5th grader took his place. Neither me nor Dylan nor anyone else knew what happened. He had the 2nd grade hallway and where parent pickup and daycare go. I don't even want to think about him yelling at some poor child who's on the wrong side of the hall. So by this time, me and Dylan were pretty much done with his S. You may be thinking, why not just stop talking to him? But it wasn't that simple. He's a good friend, and I don't want to die to call him out on his S. So at the beginning of the year, us 5th graders have to take another gifted test to make sure we're still smart, and the 3 of us were still gifted. In our area, there is a gifted school that was recently built. It's like the K-12 or something, and gifted students were allowed to apply. I'm surprised that Andrew can still ride our bus, let alone apply for the school, but whatever. So a group of 6 gifted students, me, Dylan, Andrew, a kid we'll call Steve, important later, another girl in our class, and another girl in our class who also doesn't like Andrew, all go to the special programs room to take the test to apply. There were some 2nd graders doing some tests too, and 3rd graders taking relatively the same test, just a little easier. So we get these booklets and we got 10 minutes, also important, to complete a section and a bubble sheet thing. And there are 9 sections that we do on our own. But we as a group need to wait to continue. It was patterns, number patterns. You had to fill in the bubble for the rule, and the rules weren't easy. I ended up on the waiting list for that school, farthest I've gotten, and we haven't heard anything else, but yeah. But when the lady, same lady who did testing earlier that year, announced the 1-minute mark, Andrew made a noise. I looked up across the hexagonal table, Dylan on my right, Andrew on Dylan's right, and saw Andrew crying, freaking out. Our gifted resource teacher was also there, and both of them basically told him that they could remove him if he couldn't get his S together, to which he freaked out even more. He was pretty frantic when we continued, but he eventually calmed down. So now, almost done here, just a few more paragraphs, we're into PE. There are a few kids Andrew hates. Steve, his friend, Henry, also important later, Frank, his friend, girl who doesn't like him from testing. Honestly, everyone who is in our friend group kind of hates him. That girl's friend, another friend of theirs, and this kid, Gary, who everyone hates. Gary always makes noises at inappropriate times, dances while walking down the halls, and makes a fool of himself and asks teachers for hugs, along with saying hi to people at ridiculous distances. Like, do you think that Mrs. Henry can hear you from across the gym? And when you ask him to stop, he says no. He holds up the class by crying and walking away, legit to a corner or something, and yells. But yeah, I don't know what mental disorder Gary has. But he always says that he's, quote, mentally retarded. And I know that making fun of a retarded person is effed up, but I doubt that's really what it is, as Gary makes comments about killing himself and how he's depressed and how everyone hates him. And everyone does try to help him or make him stop, but he doesn't listen. This beautiful cast of characters becomes hellspawn to Andrew. Andrew made one of the girls cry, constantly torments Gary and Steve, makes fat jokes about Frank. Honestly, everyone does. He doesn't shower. He's an effing perv from experience. Is on and off friends with his entire friend group, and he makes it his job to annoy everyone. Well, he's not much fatter than me, but I don't try to make everyone hate me. And I like to think that I'm pretty well respected. And chases one of the earlier mentioned girls during PE with a hula hoop when he gets mad and she yells at him for getting in her face. Henry. Poor Henry is a sensitive kid, but otherwise pretty cool to hang around. He cries a lot is my point. The other week, apparently Henry, quote, took Andrew's hula hoop. He's one of those weirdos who collects them on his shoulder and tugs them around during recess. So Andrew was in his face, yelling at him to give it back. Henry, somehow being the kid who sobbed over some kid getting his napkin on his flatbread, isn't crying at this point. He firmly hangs on to that hula hoop. Andrew is dragging Henry by the hula hoop, grinding his teeth, eyes popping, red face yelling at Silent Henry. Once again, Andrew is in no trouble at all. Lunch. The last part, for now, of this incredibly long, oh my god, wow, sorry, post is insane. I've been waiting for about an hour now. Bear with me. So, in the 4th grade, to put this into perspective, Andrew got mad and started to slam this thick book into his head and liked to use his lunchbox, very long strap things, to disgust us by showing how long he could strangle himself. Yeah, it got worse. So this year, when Andrew gets mad, he slams things. We have assigned seats for lunch, so it's me, Dylan, Andrew, this kid I'll call Ralph. Andrew hates Ralph. And 2 of the girls mentioned earlier who hate Andrew, along with this girl whose main deal is that she was held back for kindergarten, a year older than everyone, except this one girl, aka a different story, and likes to constantly moan on purpose and say things like that to everyone, even teachers, and she rarely stays at our table during lunch. She's usually yelling at other tables or just sitting at them. Ralph likes to joke around a lot, which makes Andrew's blood boil. Jokes become personal attacks to this dude. Like, one day, Ralph said that they shouldn't have put Waluigi in Smash Brothers or something, and after a while, Andrew goes insane and starts slamming his lunchbox on the table. Andrew likes to take stuff from people's plates. Like, Ralph gets a chicken salad for lunch, Andrew eats the chicken. Ralph doesn't mind, but the 2 girls do, as Andrew likes to yell and shake Ralph a lot, leading to a bunch of blowouts. Andrew concerningly eats his entire lunch in like 5 minutes. Us main 3 are all kind of chubby, no offense, and talks and eats others' food the rest of the time. Now, since I'm in this girls' coding club, I'm not at lunch once a week, and sometimes this other club calls me for lunch too, so I haven't seen every freak out. Apparently, the other day he broke the glass thing, the table number card holder thing, and a chunk flew off while I was at one of my clubs. Whenever we get in trouble, Andrew likes to blame the moaning girl for yelling, and says that me and Dylan, the peacemaker, thanks Dylan, constantly want to make a smart comment about his rants and tells the 2 girls to stay out of his business. Recently, we've been playing D&D. Me, Dylan, Ralph, and Andrew. Since we all died, we restarted. But he said we couldn't choose our race because the first time around, Ralph said he wanted to be black so he could say the N-word. Ralph's Asian. Dylan and Ralph are the only 2 white people at the table. They also told this as a joke to one of the black PE teachers who just looked at Ralph with a disappointed smile and walked away. Ralph said he wanted to be Goku and stuff, so of course, Andrew went ape-s. The usual slamming and such. No repercussions. The following Monday, I brought a dice to school for D&D. Dylan and Ralph were playing, but when I put it down on the table, while the 2 thanked me, Andrew simply said, "Oh, don't worry, OP, we aren't playing today," completely ignoring the 2.
I could almost see a storm brewing up when I saw my mom walk in the house with yet another outrageously expensive necklace. My dad would go all haywire if he found out that she went out on yet another spree to drain all of his precious money, I thought. She has become a serious shopping addict and thinks that she can hide it easily because of my disability to hear. Well, much to her dismay, I absolutely can. When I was about 7, I developed a rare ear disease, due to which I couldn't hear anything by the time I reached the age of 10. We tried numerous treatments. Consequently, I underwent through several surgeries, but nothing really seemed to work for me. I was distressed. I knew life wouldn't be easy anymore, and I was petrified of the huge expedition in front of me, which was learning sign language and reading lips. I felt like my life has been turned upside down when I found out I couldn't go to the school every normal kid does. Yes, you guessed it right. I had to get enrolled into the school for children with sight and hearing disabilities. I'd be lying if I said it didn't take a toll on me. One day, I was so tired of limitation imposed by my disability that I started crying heavily. I fell to my knees with my head held between my hands, drowning in the river of my tears. My broken dreams and newfound anxieties would haunt me in my sleep. I was not ready to admit that I couldn't listen and jam to my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs. But I still had some luck left. God gave me good friends. It was just another regular stressful day until I saw my friend Macy rushing towards me with a bright grin on her face. She engulfed me in a hug. I was slightly taken by her strange behavior. "What's up with you today?" I asked. She nudged my elbow and pulled me to a side, whispering into my ear, "I have something for you." She had sparked my curiosity. "What's this device in your hand?" I asked. "This?" she laughed. "It will change your life." "Congrats! You can finally hear, my love." I would never believe her if I didn't try it for myself. Yes, I could hear everything. I could finally listen to Joni Mitchell as much as I wanted. I felt my feet lift off the ground. I was enthralled. I decided to be coy about it and didn't tell my parents a word about it. I couldn't believe that my parents didn't buy me a hearing aid despite seeing me struggle intensely. I felt betrayed, that too by my own parents. It felt unreal. They couldn't understand my misery. I talked about a storm earlier. So one night, my parents got dressed up for a party. My mom put on her twinkling necklace and clingy black dress. Both of them looked dapper. It seemed like they were going to a fancy party at an elite's palace. I was bewildered. When did they become so rich? I asked myself. At this point, I couldn't care less. I grabbed some snack and went to watch TV. Netflix and chill, you call it. All of a sudden, I heard someone banging on the door heavily. I slightly panicked, but decided to hear the door anyway. I ran to see in the CCTV my parents had recently installed. I saw a middle-aged woman in distress. "Yes?" I asked. "Open the door, please! They're after me! It's Tracy! I'm in trouble!" She looked like she genuinely needed help, so I opened the door and let her in. Her eyes were sunken in. She had huge bags underneath. It appeared as if she hasn't slept for days, her lips chapped and dehydrated. She kept asking me questions about some necklaces and my parents' whereabouts. I somehow told her I couldn't hear and left the room to bring her some food and water. She ate and continued thanking me profusely. A few minutes later, she retired to my bed as suggested by me, and within few seconds she dozed off to sleep. The sound of my parents quarreling snapped me out of my daze. I rushed towards them. "Why aren't you asleep, Emily?" my mom asked me. I sighed and asked them to follow me to my room. That is when I saw the color draining from their faces. They shrieked. "Why did you come here, Trace?" My mom's voice echoed through my room. We are in turmoil, I thought to myself. My dad made up some lie about Tracy's relationship with my parents and instructed me to go sleep in their room. I know eavesdropping is a bad thing, but I was not bothered. I still tried listening to my parents talk. I realized my friend Macy wasn't lying when she said, "This device is extremely high-powered because I could hear some men talking. We can't keep waiting for her here forever. They may call cops on us. We should leave." The huge black Mercedes drove off swiftly. Soon after, I heard my parents sneaking out of the house. I ran up to the huge window and couldn't believe what I had seen. My parents were sure hiding the truth from me. They met a guy in front of Tracy's car. He handed them red boxes. "We'll put them in the lock room." I was dumbfounded. Did we have a lock room in our home, or are they talking about our study? I had to find out, so I tried to hide somewhere they couldn't see me. My dad went to his study, followed by my mom. My dad removed his hand-knotted vintage rug, and I wish I prepared myself for this moment, because beneath the rug was a door to a basement. It would be an understatement if I say I was stunned. The room was stacked with cash and red-colored velvet boxes. My eyes shone as my mom opened few boxes. The diamonds and jewels lit up the whole room. I gasped and rubbed my eyes in disbelief. I heard my mom say, "Let's wrap up this matter tomorrow. We'll have to do something about Tracy. She can cause us some heavy trouble." I was confused. What are they hiding from me? How do I find out? I was exhausted. I was hyper-aware of my surroundings, so upon feeling slightest disturbance near my dad's study, I was up on my feet and marched toward the room. As I opened the door, she gasped, her mouth ajar. She panicked and tried to make excuses, and suddenly I felt a shift in her expression. Her lips upturned in a soft smile, and with that she came closer to me. "You've been so kind to me," she said, while stroking my hair. In a matter of seconds, she pushed me into the basement and closed the door. She knew the passcode for this safe room? I shrieked. I couldn't believe how naive I was. Now it was me in that room, all alone, crying and knocking on the door hastily, but no one heard my cries. Few seconds later, "Tracy is gone. She ran away," I heard my dad say through my hearing aid. My mom wailed while I could imagine my dad had his head in hands. He was furious at my mom. "You said Tracy was your good friend? Would you like to rethink about it?" my dad said, gritting his teeth. "What are you going to tell our boss Alex? He will not be good to us. You are one to blame," said my dad. "Do you want more of those blindingly shiny neck pieces?" My dad continued attacking my mom with snide remarks. I could only hope my parents would realize I was missing, but they didn't. So I sat on the floor of the room, soaking up the warmth from dim light of the room. I was surrounded by heaps of cash and boxes filled with jewelry. I didn't know my hearing device could catch the lowest and highest of the frequencies. I heard buzzing sounds. I figured out it was the boss Alex my parents were worried about, the same guy I saw in the black Mercedes. I thought my parents would finally come and look for me. The bell ringing snapped me out of my haze. I figured they were inside my house. They were demanding about Tracy and her stuff. Her stuff? I questioned myself. I could hear their footsteps approaching toward the study. Saying my prayers under my breath, I was ready for the relief. My parents opened the door of the room. There were two guys dressed in black standing in front of me. Their eyes lit us at the sight of cash and load of jewelry. Right when they were bussing looking inside, my parents shoved them inside and locked the room. I quickly hid behind the bags, hoping they won't notice my presence. But they did, and a shriek left their mouth that shrilled throughout the room. They were terrified. For a few seconds, I couldn't understand it, but eventually got a hang of it and decided to play along to what they were thinking. Suddenly, one of them broke their silence. His lips were quivering, eyes were wide, and body shivering. "Soul of the goodness, we ask for your forgiveness. What can we do for you to forgive us?" I had to stifle my giggles and continue with the act I had put on. I said, "Leave these people alone. It's not their fault. Go earn the money the righteous way. You need to leave, leave, leave," in a sing-song voice. I was surprised at myself and was trying my best to suppress my laughter. Both of them nodded their heads hurriedly. I think God answered my prayers, and my parents opened the door of the room. Both of them hurried out and ran without even looking back. They were definitely running for their lives. My parents chased them without even noticing me. As soon as they left, I came out of the safe room and ran to my room. I locked myself into my room. I sat on my bed, recollecting myself. I was thinking about my whole day as I lied on the bed. "Whoa, what a whirlwind was this day!" I said to myself. I walked up to my desk, took out my journal. I started writing about the unusual events of the day. It is sure something to remember for the rest of my life. Why would my parents lie to me? And why were they doing this? I pondered over the situation. I finally understood that they were doing illegal business just to feed their hunger for money. I felt ashamed. How can they be so selfish? They were buying those second-copy jewelry and selling it to the men I encountered earlier, who sold them ahead in black. I was in a state of shock. I thought we were poor, and my parents made money through blood and sweat. Since my dad had a small job in the corporate and my mom was a housewife who stayed at home and played dress-up every single day of her life. I heard the door closing, which signaled me that they were finally inside. I came out of my room, pretending to rub sleep off my eyes. That was the moment my mom turned toward me and gave me a sympathetic smile. I feigned unawareness about the situation and asked my parents if they could buy me a hearing aid, to which they blatantly refused. I couldn't believe my eyes. My heart said to confront them about the heaps of money they've been hiding underneath the ground, but my mind said to remain silent, and perhaps this was the reason why they want me to stay deaf. Nevertheless, I had learned my lessons.